welcome to another episode of INclusiverse. I'm your host, Callie Kalida, and today's episode is all about working mums. And as if by magic, I have two working mums with me today. So let's go over to working mum number one.
Hi, Callie. My name is Beth Stanley. I work for Blue Square on behalf of Samsung. I've been here 5 years now, and I've got two little girls. Delilah is 7, going on 17, and Orla is 2.5.
Going on.
Oh, wherever she wants. Wherever she wants. So yeah, that's me. Nice to be here.
Thanks for joining us, Beth. And working mum number 2.
Thanks. I'm Lauren Ilsley, and I'm account director at Blue Square, looking after HP as a client. And I have two lovely children as well, Oscar, who is 8, and Etta, who is 4.
And they are going on.
Yeah, well, youngest one definitely. Second child syndrome, I think.
Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you talking to us all about kind of being a working mum, and especially in the senior positions that you both hold. Beth, what's your senior position that you're currently holding for?
I'm on the training side of the Samsung business, and I'm head of field training and operations.
It's a fancy title, that.
It's quite a long one, isn't it?
What's it for short? What's short?
I'm a hot.
There we go.
Nice.
And Lauren, you've already said that you're an account director, so still another very senior position for Blue Square on behalf of HP. So, you've both got children, relatively, I would say, young. Both under 10, etc. So I wanted you both to tell us a little bit more about kind of your maternity leave experience with each of your children, because I appreciate that would have been slightly different, maybe different businesses. So Lauren, tell us a little bit more about what maternity looked like for both of your kids.
Yeah, of course. I had Oscar back in 2015, and at the time I was working for a different company. But actually, my maternity leave was very similar in terms of what I was offered. I had statutory pay. At the time, I was on a lot of commission salary, which I obviously lost whilst I was on maternity as well. So it was just statutory pay on my basic salary, which was obviously kind of a huge hit, really, when you're used to being in sales and having a sales target. Had a lovely maternity with him, had loads of time off, as much as I could get, really. Used all my leave at the end of it. Etta's was quite different, because that was in time of the pandemic. So I deliberately had a 4-year age gap. Oscar was off to school, so I thought I'd have one lovely little baby at home. And 6 months later, obviously, ended up with both of them at home and homeschooling a 4-year-old. So,
ouch.
Slightly different experiences. But I was still working for the same company, the same basic statutory pay.
And how did you navigate, obviously, having 2 children when you were working for the same company around work in that kind of environment?
So I actually was on maternity leave and took redundancy due to the pandemic with my second. So I only went back to work after having Oscar, and then had a gap after taking redundancy. It was slightly different. My role was in the airline industry, so I went back to work and was away a lot of the time. And luckily I have a lot of family support at home, but I can imagine that could be a bit of a nightmare of a job. Shift work, being away for different times. Nurseries aren't, understandably so, aren't as accommodating when you're on shift work. I had to choose the hours that I needed him to go in, which makes it quite difficult as well.
Yeah, no. And what about you, Beth? Because am I right in thinking you had your youngest in this company and your eldest in a different one?
Yeah. So I had Delilah in 2016 when I worked for a previous company, and much like Lauren, we had no children before Delilah, so I was really able to save to get some money behind us before I went off on my maternity leave, and that was a statutory maternity pay. So I took probably 14 months off with Delilah by the time I used my holiday and took the full entitlement. And that was good. It was nice. I had a bit of a tough coming back from that one, because there were lots of changes within the business, and I wasn't probably treated the way I should have been because I was on maternity leave. I wasn't engaged at the right time. There were meetings going on that I wasn't invited to, so I was hearing a lot of stuff second or third hand. And actually, by the time I did come back, decisions had been made that included my role and what the new shape of that would look like. So that was really hard. Not only are you coming back having a first baby, even 14 months later, your hormones are all over the place, especially with your first. It's such a shock to the system. So that was quite challenging. I actually ended up taking voluntary redundancy from that job a couple of years later as well. And then I came over to Blue Square. And just at the end of the pandemic, we were coming back to work, and I did have to declare to my boss that I was pregnant because it was going to be quite obvious. And then with Orla, because we had Delilah in nursery, I wasn't able to get the savings behind me to have the time off that I really would have liked with Orla. So actually, I had 9 months off with Orla. And then I came back into the business after 9 months. So quite different experiences, but the coming back into Blue Square was brilliant. You know, I was engaged all the way through. There was also a slight change to the role I was in at the time when I was with Blue Square, but I was fully up to speed. I was engaged at times that suited me. You know, things were booked in, could work around myself and the baby. But I came back at 9 months because of the statutory maternity package. That was really all that we could afford at the time. So I came back then, yeah.
Yeah, that's understandable. And in both of your opinions, what more could your employers have done at the time?
I think the company that I was working for was obviously extremely large, mainly women within the company. So they're used to people going off on maternity, but we didn't necessarily have that one-to-one relationship with our manager. I had quite a lot of issues when I had Oscar. I ended up in hospital with him for a month, and no one knew that. So I think working for a smaller company like Blue Square, where you have a relationship with your manager, that's definitely a benefit to us, really, that I could have told that story. No one ever really knew that had happened, and I just came back to work and that was it. Just tick box, you're back in.
Yeah. Wow. I think with my first maternity leave as well, I had a change of manager in that time. So actually the relationship that I did have, I then didn't know the new person that had taken the role of my manager at the time. So we had no relationship, no real communication. Everything was done through HR, which is, I think, quite a lot of things got missed. Whereas with Blue Square, I had the same manager the whole time I was off. And actually a really lovely thing that I remember is when Orla was born, I obviously sent a picture to my then boss and said, oh, she's here, her name's Orla. And probably a day later, I had a personalised card from Blue Square with her name on. And it was the first thing I'd had with her name on. So it's actually still in a little frame in her room. So it's little touches like that really make a difference, especially when you already think you're out of the loop a little bit being on maternity leave.
Yeah, and I guess that kind of brings us into kind of what was your experience like when you were returning to work?
My first one was a mess, basically. There really is no other word for it. I was being pulled into consultations while I was still off, and then when I was coming back, I was given a new region that really wasn't going to work with, obviously, the baby at home, and then that was really quite challenging. But actually, I just kind of dug deep and thought, I've got to get on with it until maybe I find something else. But actually returning to Blue Square, it was, although it was earlier than I would have liked it to be, actually it was really nice because I probably knew I wasn't going to take so long off this time. I kept kind of one foot in. I had an idea of what was going on, so I didn't feel so alien when I got back. But actually when I got back, there was a pretty full reintroduction plan put in place for me that at the time I was almost like, oh, okay, I can go now. But it was really nice to have that breathing space of 2-3 weeks just to get reacclimatized. So actually my return with all of it was really good.
And what about you, Lauren? I know you said that you took kind of like your redundancy whilst you were having one of your, on maternity for one of your children. How did you return to work after that?
Yeah, I think I went through kind of a really strange time after that because I'd been flying for 13 years almost, and it was the push that I needed to change career, but it was a career change nonetheless. And obviously that was through the pandemic, and I really struggled to get a role. There was thousands of people that were in the same boat as me at the time. I was returning from maternity. I was thinking, what do I need to be flexible around the children? How do I make it work? Learning a new trade and, understanding a new industry. So I went through a lot of interviews, to be honest, and it was quite stressful. I knew I'd get there in the end. It's just one of those things when you realise, wow, your whole life has changed. You're trying to go up against it, really. Then landed a sales role in the tech industry, and that was full on, you know. It was
Intense,
full on sales. I went on to kind of lead a team that was outbound callers, so on the phone all day, really high pressured sales environment, and it was a lot of hours. Then went on to a PBM role, kind of looking after resellers across the country. And again, doing lots and lots of miles with young children, getting up at 5, not getting back till 8.
Wow.
You know, I really had to put the work in to make it work.
How did you adjust, especially considering you're a working mum now? You've got 2 little ones. How did you adjust?
Yeah, I think I just had to be honest, to make it work. I knew that I needed to get my career off the ground, and there was no other choice for me, really. Luckily, like I said, I've got a great support system. My husband helps out as much with the kids. You know, we really are in a 50-50 in this. And my mum helps out and takes them where needed as well. So we do have a great support system. But yeah, there wasn't really any option. If I knew that I needed to start a career, you know, I was early 30s, I had to get going. You know, I was already probably on the back foot.
And what would you say are like the biggest challenges that you had?
I guess when your children are ill, I think that's the hardest point.
You dread the call, don't you?
You dread the call. I've had calls when, you know, I'm all the way on the other side of the country and had to drive back, and you never know what you're getting home to. And then once one of them's ill, you're all ill. You know, it's like a big takedown. So I think that's always the hardest challenge with parenting and working.
And I think it's the expectation as well. You know, we've just said jokingly, we dread the call. My youngest is in nursery and my eldest was at the same nursery. So we've been with that nursery kind of 6 years now. They will always call me first. I will always get the first call. And if I can't answer it, then they'll call my husband, and then my husband will call me and say, the nursery have called you. And like, they've also called you. So I think it's the expectation that even though there isn't a primary parent, I think as a working mum, you are the default if something goes wrong. And that can be incredibly stressful when you come back and you miss 3 calls, and it's just the weight of expectation when you're trying to be really present where you are. It's a lot to kind of juggle, and when things go wrong, they go really wrong a lot of the time, don't they?
And the same for you. Has that been an adjustment in terms of that? What you just said, it's hard when they're cool, when they're ill and things
I think,
like that.
Yeah, it is always the case that the mum will get called first. And interestingly, I think considering I was the one that worked away a lot, I wasn't the primary phone number on the sheet, yet they'd always default back to the mother. And I think that's a really strange system that we're in, where that is the first call that you make.
It's like that unconscious kind of like bias, isn't it? Based on, if you look, history.
Yeah.
You know, it's not a case of there's one person that goes out to work and the other one stays at home and looks after kids these days. It is much more balanced. And I guess what I really want to know is, how did you start to progress at work after your return?
Yeah, I think obviously for me, like I said, a career change, had to go kind of straight into it. I think what a really interesting point is, obviously I was interviewing post having children. I know Beth obviously was interviewing between her children, but for me, I'd finished having my children, and I consciously made the effort during an interview to mention that I was done having children.
Wow.
And I think that's quite a big thing, that I sat back and thought that would be a disadvantage to me if I still wanted children.
But it's still like we say about that bias, right? Because they wouldn't have asked your husband. You wouldn't have said, "Are you done having kids?"
They don't. I laugh because it just wouldn't happen. But I had something similar when I was interviewing, when I was newly married for positions. I didn't say that I was ever a newlywed, because the assumption is for, I think, women, whenever they get married, late 20s, early 30s, if you're married, you're probably going to have a baby soon. And also I remember when I was interviewing and I had just Delilah, I would say I had children rather than I had one. And then when we would get down the line, I say, oh no, I've just got the one. Because I think then it's an expectation that some people want more than one child. So I would always say, if they're asked, do you have children? Yes, I do have children.
Wow. I guess I never even thought about how it's mental, right? Even when you're in these situations and you know you can do the job, you know you can do well at it, but you're having to make those conscious choices on the types of words that you're using or the way that you phrase your home life in order to be seen as more appealing. I think that's a really difficult process for the pair of you to have gone through, even in the positions that you're in now, to even get to that point, which is, it kind of brings us then on to balance, right? You're saying that you might feel disadvantaged if you were to say, like, you know, having to make it clear, I'm not having any more kids, I'm done. So how have you kind of balanced your increasing professional responsibilities, career progression and all of that stuff, and the demands of motherhood as well?
I think each role has different demands, and each child will need different things from you at different times. I think when I came back to, when I had my maternity leave with Delilah and it wasn't good, it had made my decision that I was going to leave. So one bad experience for a female or a working parent in the workplace could then end your tenure with that company.
Wow.
So I decided in that moment when I came back, I'm going to stick this out until I find something else. I don't want to work in a business like this anymore. Luckily, I took voluntary redundancy, and that kind of forced my hand to then go and find something, and that something was Blue Square. So I think it's so important that a bad leave or reintroduction to the business can really shape what that employee is going to do, if they're going to stay or if they're going to go. And I think different roles demand different things from you at different times. My first role within this business was demanding of my time. I travelled, there were last minute things that came up, and there were slightly more late nights and things like that, and no overnight stays as such, but it was a real juggle between I need to be late tonight, can you do this? Or I need to be out early tonight, can you do this? Whereas with my new role that I'm in at the moment, I have slightly more flexibility around my time. The demands on me are greater, but I'm able to make that work slightly more around, if I get home at 6:30, I'll put the kids down, I might pick up my laptop again at 8, because that suits me and that helps me plan stuff, and I'm absolutely okay with it, because I think as a working mum or a working parent, you finish one job, you go and do the other job, and then you might just pick up a little bit of one of the other jobs at a later point. So I think roles require different things from you, and that will change in time. When I came back after having Orla, I knew that I probably was getting close to the end of my regional manager role because of the demands on my time, and I was looking for something else that would help me do both jobs better.
Yeah, I really echo that actually. I think being in a field sales role demands a lot of your time, and when you're out on the road visiting clients, you're not at your laptop. So when you get back late at night after putting the kids to bed, you've got your emails to do, you've got your actual day job to catch up on.
Admin, all that stuff.
So I think that's a really tough position to be in, and actually in my role now, you know, HP is 10 minutes down the road from me, Hertford's slightly further, but it's still a lot more flexible than I've been used to for the past few years.
And do you feel like you've had any challenges or barriers to progression because of your responsibilities as a mum?
No, I actually don't. And I don't know whether that's joining this industry post-pandemic. I genuinely think a lot of my friends, both male and female, at C-suite level, have come. The pandemic was a big eye-opener for them, and how many hours they were doing and how much time they weren't spending as a family. So I think I joined after that, and it hasn't given me any barriers, because people are a lot more understanding. If you say, oh, can we move that call 15 minutes, I've got to pick the children up. Like, it's a fact of life. It doesn't mean you're any worse at your job. Everyone that is a parent has to do those things.
I don't think I face barriers that have been put in front of me, but I think, as I said, the role I was doing at the time, I knew I would struggle to give it what I wanted to give it with 2 children. Not that there would have been any pressure coming from the business in any way, but I probably would have put my all into something that isn't my home life and my kids, and I think that could have had a detrimental effect. So absolutely no pressure from the business, probably pressure from myself. I think completely the same, that after the pandemic, the world changed, how we work changed. It's a real leveler for parents as well, when there's both parents at home and you're both trying to work. I'm incredibly lucky that I can have flexibility around my role, but I choose not to have the children at home with me if I'm working from home. So even if at the end of school I'll put them in an after school club, because I find that as a mother, if they're in the house, they're on my hip, and I can't get anything done.
Yeah.
So although the flexibility is there for me, I still feel that I wouldn't be able to commit to either one of those things properly. So I tend not to have the children at home with me when I work, whereas I know there are plenty of fathers that do work with their children at home, and some mothers can do it as well. My children wouldn't allow me to do that, so I choose not to. But I work in a business where if they were there, that would be completely accepted as well, like after school hours. But I can't do it.
Hey, at least you're honest about it. You just say it how it is. And I guess what has the kind of the biggest positive impact of being a mum had on the way that you work and on your leadership style, etc.?
Yeah, I think, well, ultimately when you have toddlers, negotiation is key, right? I think
Anything for a Haribo.
Yeah.
Oh, happy life.
I've learnt so much from being a parent, but not just from being a parent, from speaking with other parents and seeing how other people parent. My mum works in a school, and so I've been very used to that upbringing of children have a voice too. And I think with my children, I always bring them up that actually it's not, you must do it my way. We treat each other with mutual respect, which is a thing that can be brought into the workplace, right? It doesn't matter your title or how long you've been in a company. It's actually treat each other with mutual respect and you get a solution.
Totally. I think my biggest one becoming a working mother is when I was in my 20s and I would see working mothers and see maybe some of the flexibility that they had, I couldn't understand. And I wouldn't be empathetic that I couldn't do that meeting at 5 o'clock on a Friday because you've got to go and pick up someone from tennis club. I didn't understand it, I didn't get it. Now I'm living it. So I think it's empathy. When you understand what someone else is doing, you can empathise with them. But I think also as well, I was brought up in a family where both my parents were teachers. So I was very used to going to a childminder and this, that and the other. So it isn't alien to me that my kids are in nursery or after school clubs or before school clubs. And they also understand why I'm working and what I'm doing. I'm very honest with them when I'm not there or when their dad is away for work as well. But I think becoming a working mum and taking it into the workplace, negotiation is a huge key. But I think it's understanding the why behind people need to do things and why they need to work that way, and are there the reasonable adjustments that we can make for people to allow them to work in a better, more productive environment, because it isn't the way it was pre-pandemic, and your life isn't the way it will be post-children either. It can't work the same way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that brings us nicely onto kind of what's the most important thing that Blue Square as a company could focus on to better support new and existing mothers in the workplace.
Yeah, I think obviously kind of statutory rights is key to go above and beyond that, really, if we can. I think it's a huge hit to your salary, and even though you're not out as much and not spending as much, you're used to a certain lifestyle.
But your mortgage also doesn't reduce.
Your bills don't reduce. You're actually feeding an extra person. Yeah. So I think that is a major thing when I look at people across the business that potentially will be having children. It's a big thing to them as to why they would wait, because they need to save. And I know for myself that was a major struggle at my former company.
And you can save when you don't have one. It's very difficult to save when you have one, and maybe you're paying a nursery fee, or you've had to move to a bigger house because you need another bedroom. So I agree with an enhanced statutory payment program would be brilliant. And I think actually in this day and age it's quite odd that there isn't one in place. So I think that's definitely a huge thing, and that is to help working mothers to people that want to be mothers to make the decision. I get questioned a lot by people in the business that don't have kids that say, how do you do it? And it shouldn't be scary. But if you have that question of, it feels unobtainable, then that isn't right.
And also, paternity as well.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
a huge thing. It shouldn't, if you're the breadwinner of the house, it should be an option that your partner can have that time off as well.
I think the other thing about making working mothers, getting them back into work, and I think I was talking to my husband about this before I came on this podcast. I said to him, if you were at a work event or if you are anywhere, does anyone ever ask you who's got the children? And he said, no, never. And I will always get asked, and it's out of a place of love, but it's still showing a huge disparity between two working parents, in the fact that if I am at a work event or working late somewhere, and it's all done with caring in the right vein, or is someone going to get the kids, or are you all right to be here? You know, I'm absolutely fine, because I am. But I don't think male parents get that same questioning sometimes, unless they're single fathers.
Yeah.
Fab. And I think last question, I know you talked about a lot today, is what would be your advice to other working mums who want to progress in their career without compromising the dedicated time they want to give to motherhood?
I think it's a difficult one, because every industry is different, every manager is different. I think just be vocal. Say it how it is, because some people do have struggles, and other people can go back to work and their child is a dream, and they sleep at night, and you don't have money worries to put them in nursery. But I think understanding that person and actually their journey within it, I think I had very different experiences with both my children, and would have been a totally different way to manage that, based on those experiences.
I think as well that some advice would be present where you are. So I had a really awful habit, pre-pandemic actually, of working while Delilah ate her tea. And actually when we went into the pandemic, Delilah was drawing, and she drew a picture of me at my desk with my laptop. And I was like, oh, that's not great, is it? So I think if you're in work, try and be present, because that's really hard for a new mother coming back to work. But I think actually give yourself the headspace from the children, and let yourself be present and do what you're doing, because it's no good doing two things subpar when you can actually try and be present. So if you're at work, really try and be present, and that's a lot easier said than done. But if you're at home for those hours, try and be really present with them, because you'll get more from both things by doing that, I think.
Some solid advice there from both of you. It's almost like you've done this before. Lauren and Beth, thank you so much for joining us on this episode, and for our listeners and our viewers as well, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you in the next one.